everyone, today I'm going to use this latte cardstock, and this is my die cuts with a view, and you can see I've already used quite a few bits of it already, and I really love it, especially for masculine cards and anything like that. And I'm also going to use some of these new, well, not quite so new, Hero Arts cling stamps. So they're called the dots, the cling dot stamp. And I've just cut a piece of grey cardstock, and you can see the normal size card here in Britain isn't quite the same size as the Hero Arts dot stamp that you can buy, because they are set for the American size standard size card. So all I've done is literally just trimmed off the very sort of 5mm off the bottom of the card, so it fits across here when I'm going to stamp these dots. And I've just stamped it using Versamark ink, and I'm just laying it down onto the stamp as opposed to trying to stamp onto the bit of paper, onto the cardstock. And I'm just using my my roller just to go over it and make sure it's in the right place. You can buy brayers from most craft shops, they're a general art supply anyway. And here I'm just going to use some clear embossing powder. You could use white embossing powder, especially if you're using a dark cardstock background, and that'd really show up nicely. But for this I just wanted quite a subtle effect, and it just almost looks like a watermark, embossed watermark, once you've finished embossing with clear embossing powder. And here I'm preparing the bit I'm going to put on top of the card, and I'm literally just using my corner chomper. I'm using the 1/4 inch setting here and then the 1/2 inch setting here. And so when I put these two pieces together, the corners will look quite uniform and it'll sit quite well. Here I'm using some Tombow glue. It's this taper in a glue, and I really don't get on with this for some reason. It just keeps sticking and it wouldn't lay down properly where I was trying to put it on the card. So this one's definitely not for me. I've been trying a few different adhesives recently just to try and find one that, you know, works well for me and doesn't fall apart after, you know, a few months. So you can see I was getting quite frustrated with this. And I'm just sticking the one piece onto the second piece here. And you can see, because I've used the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch corner rounder, that it gives a really nice frame to that middle piece. And again, I'm just going to stick this cardstock straight down. Here you could use 3D stickers if you wanted to just add a bit of lift, but because I've got quite a big flower design going on the front of this card, I wanted all these to be as flat as possible, so, you know, I could mail it okay. Okay, so now to make the flower. And for this I'm going to use 3 different designs from that paper pack I showed you earlier. And I'm just rough cutting a circle. I did this recently for a Mother's Day card, which I'll give you a link to the video here too. And for that I believe I cut some uniform circles using a circle cutter. But they don't need to be so perfect, so I just rough cut these for the sake of speed. And I've cut 3 different sizes, and these are all going to make up the layer of the flower. Now if you wish, you could just assemble the flower as they are now, like this, without roughing up the edges, which I'm doing here using my Making Memories paper edge scraper. I think it's called a paper scraper or something. And I'm not being precious with this. I'm really, you know, roughing up the edges, and I don't really care if it rips. I just want that, you know, I want the edges to be totally roughed. And you can ink these if you like. I did on a different card, but I haven't done on this particular version. And I'm just screwing it up into a ball. It's quite tough to do with this paper because it's actually quite thick cardstock, but screw it up to give it lots of creased on the front, and then we can just go ahead and sand across it with a sanding block. And this isn't a craft sanding block, it's just a sanding block I bought from my local hardware store. So, you know, you don't have to spend money to do craft. You can, you know, just buy the cheaper stuff and it works just as well. And I've done that with all 3 of those. And here I'm just choosing a brad to assemble the card with. I actually, in the end, decided to change the brad. I changed it for a slightly lighter colour because I wasn't entirely happy with with it. It didn't match the rest of the card, but anyway, that's beside the point. And so I've just assembled it by punching through it, and now I'm just kind of squeezing the flower to give it that 3D shape before I adhere it down to the card. So now to assemble the entire card, I am using 3D stickers to put this topper on, but again, if you needed it to be really thin, you could skip that and just put it on with some tape runner, or, you know, glue it on with however you glue it on. And I'm just lining this up, making sure it's centralised to my card. Once I'm happy with it, I can just press it down. Excuse me. And then to adhere the flower, I'm just using some glue dots. I think I put 3 on here because it's quite a hefty flower made out of this cardstock, and I didn't want it to go anywhere once I'd put it down. I'm just making sure I've got it in the right orientation, having a bit of a play. And once I'm sure, I just stuck it all down. And then next up, I wanted to put the message, and this is a get well card, so I've picked out all the letters from this basic grey white chocolate chip collection, and I've spelt out get well, and I'm just going to write soon underneath it using my white gel pen. So I had to write it in a mix of capitals and lowercase because I'd actually run out of enough letters in lowercase. That's why it kind of looks a bit squished, but I tried to make it look like it was meant to go like that. Anyway, what the hey. And here I'm just sketching out the word soon, because I always like to be sure I've got it right before I go ahead and put pen to paper, especially as it's the last thing I do on the card, and if I were to mess it up now, you know, I'd have to scrap the whole card and that would just be irritating. But then I go over it and write, you know, over it in the white gel pen when I'm happy. And the final touch, I think I also corner rounded, yeah, here we go, I corner rounded the bottom 2 edges and I left the top 2, and that was a card finished. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye.